About 25 years ago, I was a full-time member of the faculty of the School of Medicine and School of Public Health at the University of California at Los Angeles. Then I spent 2 years doing maternal and child health for the California State Health Department. And then I left this country and moved to Europe. In other highly industrialized countries outside of North America, birth is much more seen as a normal part of the life cycle and not as a medical or surgical event.
It's the best having a baby at home. How long's it been? An hour and a half? I'm so
almost 2 hours.
Happy I did it at home. I'm going to cry. I can't imagine. I wish I'd done it with every single one of them at home.
When I lecture to a room full of American doctors and they get upset about home birth, I say, wait a minute, hold it. Let me ask everybody in this room who has ever been at a home birth, please raise your hand. And nobody raises their hand. They've never even seen it.
You know, they tell you, well, what if you have complications when you're at home? But the thing is that you have less because you are at home. But it's exactly what you guys are talking about, that you have to trust that. No one can, you can prove it, but you have to trust that for yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Now, until I left this country and moved to Europe, everything that I had learned about pregnancy and birth, I had learned in the very orthodox, usual way for medical doctors. And I assumed simply that that was the way to do pregnancy and birth. It's the way all the doctors were doing it around here, and it seemed the way it should be. And then I moved to Europe and began working for the World Health Organization, and I had a huge shock. Because as I would go around to the highly developed countries of Western Europe, I'm not talking about the third world here, I'm talking about Germany and France and England and Denmark and Sweden and all of these countries, where in fact they are as highly developed as our own country. I discovered to my amazement that there was a very different way of doing birth than anything I had ever seen. First of all, the great majority of pregnant women were taken care of by something called a midwife. I didn't really basically know what a midwife was before I left the United States. Even with all of my training and work in healthcare, I didn't know what a midwife was until I left this country and went to Europe, where I discovered to my amazement that the midwife is an absolutely essential key healthcare practitioner who is responsible for the care of the great majority of pregnant women, doing all of the checkups and tests and all the rest, following the woman throughout her pregnancy. And when the woman has a birth, and I'm talking about in the hospital now in Europe, the woman goes into the hospital, she's taken care of by the midwife assists at the birth, the woman goes home, and the woman has never laid eyes on a doctor at any time during that pregnancy or birth. And they lose fewer babies and they lose fewer women than we do here in the United States. So here was this key health professional that I knew nothing about. And indeed, when I came back to the United States, as I did very often, because I was responsible for maternity care in the industrialized countries for the World Health Organization, so I came here too, and began talking about midwives, I discovered that the doctors in this country didn't know what a midwife was. They thought that she was some kind of a second-class obstetrician or something, which is absolutely wrong. you see? And in this country, they still think that midwives need to be supervised by doctors. Nonsense. In all of these other countries where they have a much better track record than we do, the midwives aren't supervised by doctors. They're absolutely independent health professionals taking care of the great majority of pregnant and birthing women. So I came slowly to realize that there was a whole different way of seeing pregnancy and birth than what we were doing in the United States. One of the most important experiences I've ever had in my life happened after I had moved to Europe, and I was working for the World Health Organization, and I went with a midwife and was present for the first time at a home birth. I was absolutely amazed. It caused for me what some people call a paradigm shift, which means you completely shift the way you think about something. Because suddenly I saw this woman slowly throughout her labor become more and more powerful and strong until finally near the time of birth, she was in control. The doctor wasn't in control, the midwife, that woman was in control. She found her power. She found her womanness. And she was there with that baby. And when the baby came out, I'm a neonatologist. I had seen hundreds of babies come out in the hospital. They always come out blue and floppy. Try a home birth. No such nonsense. The baby comes out pink. The baby comes out smiling and alert. It's a totally different phenomenon. You know where is the safest place for a woman to have her baby from the point of view of germs? It's home. You see, if the woman is home, she is surrounded by her own germs. Now, we all are covered with germs. We all live in germs. Our homes are full of germs, but they're our germs. We have lived with them for weeks or months or years, and we have built up very good immunity and resistance to our own germs. We have a kind of Mexican standoff with them, where they don't bother us and we don't bother them, and we live together in some kind of crazy harmony. But they're our germs. Now, the pregnant woman has antibodies to all those germs in the home, and those antibodies get transferred to the baby. So the baby is immune to the mother's germs and to the germs in the mother's home. But the baby is not immune to the hospital germs. And if the mother breastfeeds, all of the antibodies from the mother again get to the baby, and the baby has that much more resistance to the mother's germs and to the germs in the home. So the home is a perfectly safe place for the baby to be from the point of view of the germs. And the hospital is a very dangerous place to be from the point of view of germs. You have to understand that birth is a bodily function. It's all about the body, the woman's body. It's all about, secretions coming out and maybe a little blood coming out. It's all about a woman experiencing very much pain, which she may respond to by yelling and screaming. But you see, what too many doctors do not understand, and it took me a long, long time to learn, is that pain is not evil. Pain is not bad. The pain is put there for a purpose, and it has several essential purposes during the birth. First of all, it focuses the woman so she isn't going to be sitting there thinking about what she's going to make for dinner tomorrow night for the family. No, she is focused, and she needs to focus on her body, and the pain does that. Now, the pain does something else. You see, the labor is done by this muscle called the uterus or womb, which pushes the baby out. And that pushing out is done in a very, very specific way, so that it is done You have a contraction and then you rest for a while. And that resting allows the baby to once more get enough blood and oxygen and blah, blah, blah. That resting is important in between the contractions. So you have contraction, rest, contraction, rest. And then gradually the contractions get stronger and harder, and the woman's body slowly opens up. A very complicated procedure that the body knows exactly how to do. Now, how does the body control all of this? Through pain. Because the pain goes up to the brain, and in the brain secretes hormones which go through the woman's body and down to the uterus and give the message to the uterus. So then the uterus knows when to contract. Now, without the pain, the brain doesn't secrete this hormone, and there's no hormone to go down and tell the uterus what to do. So if you take away the pain, you take away the whole system. And so the pain is absolutely necessary for this regulation of the system within the body. And so it is a good pain. Now, the pain does something else. The pain gradually causes the brain to secrete another hormone. This hormone is very, very similar to what we call morphine. It is something which relieves pain. And if the woman is not given something to stop the pain, but goes through the pain and uses the pain, gradually the brain secretes more and more of this morphine-like substance, so that gradually the pain becomes less and less for the woman. So that by the time the woman's ready to actually have the baby pop out, she is full of this other hormone that's helping her to get through it. Now, if you come with some kind of painkiller from the outside, then the body will never make its own painkiller. And you see, the body's painkiller is completely safe and doesn't in any way, affect the baby. But any painkiller you bring from the outside has certain risks for the baby. Now, there's another thing about pain that is important. Not only does the woman's body help by bringing out this particular hormone, there are many other tried and true ways to help with the pain that have been scientifically proven to be very valuable. For example, for the woman to have someone with her that is supportive of her has been shown scientifically to reduce the pain and make the labor faster. For a woman to sit in a tub of warm water has been proven scientifically to be perfectly safe and to reduce the pain and speed up the labor. There are many other things that have been shown by scientific work. Massage, acupuncture, hypnosis, all kinds of other non-drug ways of coping with pain that are highly effective and that are not dangerous to the woman or the baby. When we medicalized birth, we did a number of different things. One of the things we did was to bring it into our territory in the hospital. Another thing we did was to chop up the pregnancy and birth and afterbirth into categories that fit us. Now, us includes obstetricians who take care of pregnancy. It includes pediatricians or neonatologists taking care of the baby. So, since we have divided that up, we divided the woman and her baby up. And we put the woman over here and the baby over here. And we separated them. And one of the things that we did was that we took the baby away from the mother at the time of birth and put it in another room full of babies. Because there, all of the doctors and nurses could watch the babies closely. Well, My. That simple procedure of taking the baby from the mother and putting it in another room for a few hours or days turned out, we now know at the end of this century, that was probably the single biggest mistake in pediatrics in the 20th century. That was a disaster, because when we took the baby away from the mother, we did all kinds of harm to the mother and to the baby. Because the mother and the baby need to be together to develop the appropriate kind of relationship with each other. And we know now scientifically that those first few hours after birth are absolutely essential for the mother and the baby to get together in the right way. I'll tell you a true story. There is a country called Guatemala. In Guatemala, there's Guatemala City. Guatemala City has a huge hospital that has, like 5,000 births every year are in that big hospital in Guatemala City. They were having terrible epidemics in their newborn nursery, with babies dying right and left from these epidemics. They came in, they sterilized all the equipment, all of the babies, all of everything, and the epidemics went right on. They couldn't stop them. And then God came. And God caused an earthquake. And half of Guatemala City collapsed in the earthquake, including this huge hospital. And suddenly, they didn't have any more newborn nursery. But of course, the women were coming in and having babies, because the earthquake didn't stop women from having babies. So they had all these babies, and they had no place to put them. So in desperation, they put the babies in the bed with the mother. It was the only place to put the baby. And you know what? Overnight, no more epidemics whatsoever. There's a perfectly reasonable scientific explanation. The babies were put with the mother. The babies got the germs from the mother's skin, and those were the germs the baby was already immune to, and so there was no problem. So we have gradually learned, and slowly but surely we're shutting down those disastrous newborn nurseries. And we are leaving the baby with the mother at the time of birth and never taking that baby away from the mother unless there is some serious medical problem with the mother or with the baby. Of course, that can happen, and in a few cases you have to separate. But otherwise, you don't separate. And we didn't honor the reality that the mother and the baby is what we call a dyad. It means it's two things but together like one. And it has to be treated like one. Gradually, in this country, there is a growing awareness of the need to change the way that we have been managing pregnancy and birth. For example, there is now a very acute awareness that we've been doing twice as much cesarean section as we should ever have done. And there are efforts everywhere in this country to reduce the number of unnecessary cesarean births. And the rates are slowly but definitely coming down. Also, every year in this country, the number of births attended by a midwife is going up and up. And so people are beginning to understand in this country that it was a terrible mistake when we lost this essential health professional, the midwife.